Marcotti. I'm here with Mark Ogden. This is kind of like a tradition, Mark. We do this every year. And I want to lay down kind of some of the ground rules. We'll be talking about Arsenal in a second. This is our keeper dump version. We're trying to pretend that we are Arsenal's decision makers, the people at the top, not just Arteta, but Andrea Berta, Josh Kroenke, presumably, all the people whose minds are coming together, looking at budgets, looking at contracts, looking at moves, ways to strengthen the team. And we're going to try to assess what they should do.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good picture, isn't it? Like you say, I think they're going to end up with a third successive Premier League run-up finish. They could win the Champions League, so that will make it a lot easier to sign players. But even if they get knocked out by PSG in the semi-finals, I think Arsenal are a very attractive proposition for players that want to go there. They've got a core of young players that are, Bukayo Saka obviously the main one, but Ethan Nwaneri and Mars Lewis-Skeller that suggest they've got a bright future. So I don't see a lot of heavy lifting this summer for Arsenal to do, and they're in a good position to take it on to the next level. My issue with Arsenal is, do they have the ambition and the readiness to go for it? And that's where we may disagree a little bit.
Let's break this down. Let's start with the goalkeeping situation. We're both in agreement. David Raya stays. And I think we would both keep Neto as well. He's on loan from Bournemouth. He's got a year left on his contract with Bournemouth. I don't think it would be very difficult unless, he's desperate to play. You could maybe give him another year and say, hey, come be Raya's backup at Arsenal.
I mean, he's the perfect profile for number two, isn't he? He's experienced, he's 35, so he's had his career in many ways, and he's happy to sit on the bench for a big club. And I think that's the beauty of Neto. With Tommy Setford, the 19-year-old, that's possibly the third choice option next year. The way I see that is how Liverpool operated maybe 3 or 4 years ago with Alisson Becker, Adrian, and Quivin Kelleher. I think Setford could be the Kelleher figure in that kind of group.
Let's move on to the defenders. Now, we have a bunch of people who are just straight keeps in the sense that there's not much to do.
Yeah.
Ben White, Jurrien Timber, Tomoyasu, who is injured. His contract expires in 2026. They do have a 1-year option. Obviously, you can't extend. I mean, I think he's a very good player when fit, but you have to assess how he is when he comes back. You're in no rush there. Obviously, you keep Calafiori because you just signed him. Gabriel Magalhaes is an interesting one. His contract expires in 2027. Normally, you'd be looking to extend as you enter the final 2 years of your contract. In his case, we both agree there's no reason to extend him now.
No, I don't think so. I think 2 years to go. Gabriel has done well for Arsenal. And you laugh when I suggest he's a modern day version of Martin Keown in the way that he plays. He's very aggressive. He's very tenacious. He's a sort of guy that winds up opponents. He's done a great job, but I do think there's no need to extend him. I think Arsenal, if they are going to keep on that upwards trajectory, they could upgrade on Gabriel at some point in the next 18 months.
Well, I think the other reason I would agree with you there is you do have other left-footed center backs, back options. You've got Calafiori, and you have Jakub Kiwior there. I think Jurrien Timber, even though he's not left-footed, could also do a job there. So you have a number of players to slot in there. We're going to get to Saliba in a minute. Zinchenko, we both have them moving on. He's 28 years old. He's got a year left on his contract. I don't know how much you're going to get with a year left on his deal, but I think he's somebody who can help another team, whether in central midfield or at left back. We're in agreement on that one. The other one worth mentioning, just because it's going to bring in some money, Nuno Tavares, he also has a year left on his contract. He's on loan at Lazio, and he's actually done pretty well at Lazio. I think that would bring in, according to reports, something in the region of 6 to 8 million euros, which is all good. It's all money going into the kitty. Maybe you can get some money for Zinchenko as well, possibly. Now, this brings us to 2 players where... then there's Saliba.
Yeah.
2027. We both have him set for an extension, yeah?
Absolutely. I think they have 2 or 3 priorities this summer, but I think Saliba, you have to tie him down. He's 2 years on his contract. If you don't tie him down this summer, you're getting into a problematic position next year with the year to go on his contract. And there are noises surrounding Real Madrid. Always Real Madrid look at players, but Antonio Rudiger, Alaba, they're getting on a bit. They're in the 30s now. I think Saliba to Real, if it was ever a possibility, would be an obvious one. So tie him down as quickly as you can.
And I don't think it's going to be cheap to tie him down because he is, I think, one of the top 5 center backs in the world. Where we disagree a little bit on is another center back, which is Kiwior. Now, he's 25 years old. Deal expires in 2028, so
Yeah.
you've got full transfer value. I think you should look to shift him. And the reason I say this is you can bring some money in, but mostly you kind of clear a pathway a little bit for other players. You're talking about a reserve left-footed central defender.
I thought when Kiwior arrived, I thought he was definitely, he stood out as being not good enough, but he's improved a lot. And I think in recent weeks we saw against Real Madrid, without Gabriel, he really stepped up to the mark and he looked comfortable. And I think you're right, he's not going to play when everyone's fit, but every top team needs a squad of players. They need a reliable...
And Calafiori and Timber are not enough of a squad of
Well,
players.
yeah, but they've been injured. And listen, they might not be injured next year, but their injury record in recent months has been patchy. I think Kiwior is a very useful asset to have at the back. And I don't think, with 3 years on his contract, there's no rush to get him out of the way. You say he's blocking a pathway maybe. He's 25. He's still young enough to get better again. So I would stick with Kiwior. Right. And then, listen, if he's not playing, move him on in January or move him on in the summer. But I think right now it's good to have the depth in key areas.
One other player where we agree on what they should do, because it's a no-brainer, is Miles Lewis-Skelly.
Mm-hmm.
We agree that obviously you keep him, you extend him. His contract he's out of contract in 2026. And by the way, obviously he's Arsenal through and through, as is Ethan Ranieri, who we'll get to. But a year left. He has a lot of leverage in this negotiation, especially given the season they've had.
He will be offered a big contract. Times have changed a little bit. I think 10 years ago, you'd have teams like Man City and Chelsea just hoovering up all the best players at teams like Arsenal, who had kind of fallen off the radar a bit. But Arsenal are now in a position of strength. I don't think they need to worry so much about being, having their best players taken away, because the top players now want to play for Arsenal. So they'll give him a contract, they'll get him done, and I think just a bit of patience and let him find his way, because wherever he plays, left back or midfield, he's a top player.
Let's move on to midfield. Let's start with the easy ones. Martin Odegaard, 26 years old, 2028. He's obviously a keep. Declan Rice, obviously a keep. Mikel Merino, 28 years old, 2028. We have him as a keep. I don't know that in a perfect world, I don't think this was the greatest signing. Obviously, he did bail them out a little bit with his center forward play, but obviously that's not his position.
Yeah.
You do have a lot of players, but given the amount of money they spent for him, given his age and his wages, he's not going anywhere, right?
Well, had they not had injuries, had they not had a problem up front, you have to wonder why he would have played this season. And he's kind of played because of eventualities. But then, is that not the role of a squad player? So he's done.
It's a lot of money to spend on a
absolutely.
squad player. And the other thing is, you have other people, and we're going to get to this later, but you've got Ranieri, you've got potentially Havertz. If you sign a striker, you have other people who can play the position he does. And, of course, he has Declan Rice in front of him.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
And Odegaard.
Absolutely. He might be one of those players that is a bridge from Arsenal being a certain place to being another place, then he moves on having done his job. But I agree, he's not. I don't see him starting when Arsenal are even close to full strength.
We mentioned Jorginho and Thomas Partey. Arteta hinted recently, well, maybe, or we took it that way, James Ollie reporting that maybe it was not a certainty that Partey would leave. I think if it's not a certainty, I think it should be a certainty for many, many reasons, not just on the pitch, but you factor in his age, you factor in his wages.
Yeah, I think Arsenal do need bolstering in midfield, and it's where they go. I mean, and who knows, if Zubimendi doesn't happen, and like we said in the intro, it might not happen for different reasons, that there may be other clubs. I know that Liverpool and Man City were looking at Zubimendi, so who knows? But they do need to add depth, because they can't rely on, it looks kind of a wafer-thin squad of players in midfield there.
So there's two other players on their books. One is Fabio Vieira, who he's been on loan at Porto. Yeah. He's not done very well on a poor Porto side this season. He's 24 years old.
He's not the best Vieira that Arsenal have ever had, is he?
No, definitely not the best Vieira. He shouldn't be at Arsenal next year. So if you can get some money back for him, I think it's going to be really tough, because I think his residual amortization is still something like 14 million on Arsenal's books. Or you loan him. His agent is George Mendes, who...
something, Arsenal got away with that one a bit, because other clubs, who shall remain nameless, have wasted money on players in recent seasons and been criticised for it. Nobody really mentions Arsenal's bad signings. And Fabio Vieira,
Arsenal have finished second for
exactly. But even the clubs that do it well do it badly at times. And Fabio Vieira is an example of how much of a fine line it is between players that do well and don't.
I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I think we're both in agreement that even if Zubimendi comes, they could use another defensive specialist in midfield.
Yeah.
They have Albert Sambi Lakonga. He was on loan at Sevilla last season. He was on loan at Sevilla this season. He's been a little bit in and out. I think given he's there, he's got a year left on his contract. He is what he is. Rather than, unless you find somebody you really like and it's affordable, I'd be tempted to just keep him in the team to play League Cup and whatever, and to be an alternative to the defensive midfielder that you will bring in.
He's had a couple of years on loan now, and he's had a season in the Premier League with Luton, so he knows the league. It wouldn't be the worst option.
He was at Arsenal before that.
Yeah, absolutely. But I'm saying he got his experience at Luton. I wouldn't say it's the worst idea, but
and you're not going to. I mean, you suggested moving him on, but the reality is you're not going to get any money for him with a year left on his contract. Or you get very little money, unless somebody really loves him. But I don't think that's going to happen. Up front, I'm going to start with the obvious ones again. Bukayo Saka is 23 years old. Yeah. 2027 contract expiring. You have to keep him and extend him.
Yeah, and when I said at the beginning about Arsenal showing ambition, it wasn't just about spending big money on players. It was basically people like Saka. Saka is he's the golden boy, isn't he? He's the guy that he's the face of Arsenal. He's the guy that is the best player by a long way. You have to show you have the ambition to match his ambition by giving him the contract that shows that you really want to win things. So right now we're talking.
How do you do that? By paying? Sorry, I'm not.
No, by giving.
No, sorry, I am being difficult.
Yeah.
This is when people say show ambition, show them you want to win things, right? Do I show Bukayo Saka that I want to win things by giving him a massive raise? He's on more than 10 million a year. He's already one of the highest paid players in the Premier League. By giving him a massive raise, or do I show him that do I show my ambition by saying, Bukayo, I'm not going to give you a big raise, but look, I'm taking this money and I'm buying and I'm acquiring these very good players so that we can win together.
No, what you do is you do what teams like Man City do. You give them long contracts. You basically tell Bukayo Saka, there's nobody at Man City or Liverpool that's earning more than you. You're on a 5-6 year contract because in the next 5 or 6 years,
you want to give him Mohamed Salah type money.
Yeah, why not? Or just not far off, because he's that important to Arsenal. So if Arsenal want to win the Champions League and the Premier League in the next few years, they have to persuade Bukayo Saka they want to do that, because if they don't want to do it, he does. And if he's not convinced that Arsenal can do it, he'll go somewhere else because they'll have the offers. Every club in the world would take Bukayo Saka. So Arsenal have to protect their best player
by paying him a ton of money.
Yeah, that's what other clubs do. That's what the biggest clubs do.
Ethan Ranieri is the other one. You keep and extend him.
Yeah.
Now this is my concern with Ranieri, which is he's played a lot on the right wing while Saka was out. He is an attacking midfielder type. His natural position would probably be the Odegaard role. Again, if I'm Ranieri, I would also be thinking about pathways and how do I get into a team, right? Because I'm obviously not going to get Saka out of the lineup. I'm not going to get Odegaard out of the lineup in the short term. Yeah, I'm happy to be on the bench and whatever. I do think with Merino around and bringing in a big striker, if they follow the Ogden plan, then Havertz will then be another option in attacking midfield.
Yeah.
How do I keep getting my minutes? Is this really what's best for me? And I think you need to have a conversation with him and clear a path for him where he can continue growing.
I think you're overthinking it. I think he's 18. I think you let him find his place, be patient with him, find his role, get some games under his belt. And then in the piece we make the analogy to the Class of '92 at Man United, whereby nobody thought those kids were going to break through, because at that time Man United had a team of double winners. And at one point, Sir Alex Ferguson said, right, you're ready, you're getting the team. And now he's in the team already. At some point, he will become a regular in the position that suits him best. But he's only 18. I think he will find his way. And he's not a player that's going to be damned by his versatility. He's not one of these players that never finds a role because he's good in certain positions. He will find a role at the heart of the team because he's that good.
Some of the others that we agree on, okay, let's just get these out of the way. Raheem Sterling, he's on loan from Chelsea. He goes back to Chelsea and becomes Enzo Maresca's problem.
He becomes part of the Chelsea keeper, which we'll discuss in a few weeks.
Exactly. Marquinhos has been on loan at Cruzeiro. He's got a deal through 2027. You may have forgotten about him, Arsenal fans. He played a total of 1 minute for Arsenal. He's going to go on loan, presumably he's still in Brazil. He's not going to contribute to this team. Reece Nelson was on loan at Fulham. He's 24 years old, 2027. He did suffer a bad season-ending injury. we agree. You loan him again once he gets
Yeah.
fit. Like he'll have
Yeah.
some sort of market on loan. Martinelli, 2027 with another year option. You keep him, but there's no reason to extend him at this time. Yeah.
No, not this time. I think he needs to. He's had a good couple of weeks, but I think he needs to show a bit more consistency.
Leandro Trossard, he's only got a year left. He's 30 years old. Contract is by 2026. I would offer him an extra year. And the reason is Mikel Arteta likes him a lot. He can play on that left-hand side. He can play, obviously, through the middle in a super emergency situation. I like having an alternative to Martinelli. I don't want to give up Martinelli yet. I think he's a useful squad player, and I don't think there's obvious cover in that role, other than perhaps Gabriel Jesus, who we're going to get to.
I Trossard, you absolutely keep him, and you want to give him an extension. I'm not sure yet, but I think Trossard's a great player to have around. He's very reliable, scores goals, creates. Yeah, definitely worth keeping.
Gabriel Jesus, you want to move on?
Yeah.
You suggest you either move on or you loan him. Possibly, he's injured. It's not going to happen until he proves his fitness again.
The problem, as you said, he's on Man City wages. He's on a decent contract. It's tough to sell him. It's tough to move him on.
He doesn't really have a future here. Okay, now that brings us to the elephant in the room, which is a way to introduce the other topic, which is Kai Havertz, the best on earth. Now, 25 years old, 2028. I'm going to come out and say this. I don't see what all this nonsense and all this fuss is about him. He's a center forward. He's an 8. He's a 10. He's a 22. He's not a 9.5. He scored 9 goals from open play before getting injured last season. That's more goals than all but 7 center forwards in the Premier League, all of whom have played a lot more minutes because they all keep playing. I do think you need to bring in an alternative to him, somebody who can, maybe with a different profile, who can maybe in some situations play with him, some situations fill in. I think it was absolute madness. I mean, you wrote that it cost Arsenal a shot at the title when Gabriel Jesus got injured and he didn't bring another forward. I completely agree. I think it's one of the dumbest things. I don't know if that's the reason why the guy Jason Nato didn't get the top job or not. Seems a bit vindictive if that were the case. But that was obviously a massive miscalculation for the club because then obviously Havertz got injured and we know what happened. All that said, you want to sell Kai Havertz.
I think you're being a bit...
That's what you wrote.
No, there's context here. So this feeds into the debate about what they should do in the summer. You think they should keep Havertz and sign a player that's got a proven Premier League record, a proven striker to fit in around it. I think that Arsenal need to make a statement to show that they mean business by getting an Alexander Isak, which is very difficult, I agree, a Gyökeres or a Sesko to show that they mean business. But if they do that, I don't see how a classic number 9 and Havertz work together. I think they're incompatible. I just don't think you can have a system that accommodates both. So it's going to be one will play and one will be on the bench, or one will have to accept. Yeah. And that isn't Kai Havertz is not going to accept being a 20-minute substitution. So he's a supremely talented player, Kai Havertz, but he's an enigma. I don't quite know what his best position is. He does score goals, but what I'm saying is it may be a case of offloading Kai Havertz to raise the money, which would enable them to really test Newcastle's resolve over Alexander Isak, because I just don't see how you can...
I understand your point. I think with Kai Havertz still having, and there's that word again, residual amortization, a monster residual amortization, and being injured, and being on Arsenal wages after being on Chelsea wages, which means he makes a ton of money, I don't think anybody's going to come and give you 60 million, which is what you would need to make to not to take a loss on him, given the amortization, for Kai Havertz while he's injured. It's just not going to happen.
No.
And that is one part of the reason why I am more into the idea, and this dovetails nicely with our conclusion, I'm far more into the idea of bring in, again, I don't want people to get bogged down on the names, right? But there's a bunch of players who scored more goals than Kai Havertz this year, from Mateta to Jorgen Strand Larsen. There's a lot of people who fit that bill, who you can maybe bring in for 20, 30 million. We know they were open to signing Ollie Watkins. I don't love the idea, but if the price is right with Ollie Watkins, maybe that's something. I would add one other reason, by the way, to why I don't think it's a good idea, since you can't shift Havertz, to bring in a big-name striker. If you bring in a big-name striker who wants to start, you don't want Havertz on the bench. You throw Havertz into that pool of people competing for the two attacking midfield positions, competing with Rice and Odegaard. That is a pool that already includes Marino and includes Nwaneri. So that's kind of like one more guy that you're paying a lot of money to not play.
You can't just base your summer recruitment strategy on what you can or can't do with Kai Havertz. Oh well, we can't play him there, we can't move him on. Let's sign a B-list striker because it helps keep Kai Havertz happy. No, this is the trap that so many clubs fall into. If you have to make a ruthless decision and get rid of a player that doesn't quite fit the system or doesn't move him on, finding somewhere for him to go, that's the problem.
Arsenal are in pretty good shape, and this is a big summer.
Absolutely.
We don't expect them to slide backwards next year. I mean, they would have to really, really screw things up.
I'd be very surprised. They've got everything they need with a couple of additions. Arsenal can only mess it up from here, basically.
Right. And we think, by the way, in terms of going back to your theory about the center forward and what they can spend in the squad, I think we had budgeted something like 80 to 100 million in net spend, right? Plus whatever they can raise from sales. If they can shift Kivior, if they can shift Zinchenko, they'll get money for Karl Hein as well. A little bit of money, not a lot. I think these are all people who you can realistically move. Plus the Tavares money that you're going to get. I mean, that could be an extra 40 to 50 million.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, if you budget 60 or I'm going back and forth between. I'll just stick to euros now for obvious reasons. At that point, you could be looking at something like 170 or 180 million euros gross spend, right? You got 60 million on Zubimendi. That leaves a fair whack left over for your pursuit of a center forward. Yeah. And then you'd have to hope that the savings on Partey and Jorginho and Kieran Tierney, another one who's leaving, can help you with your contract extensions.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I get back to, I use Declan Rice as an example. When Arsenal signed Declan Rice, £105 million, that they obviously sing the song that it was cheap at, it could have been half the price. You think that there's never a cheap deal at £105 million,
no,
but
Declan Rice. Maybe if you sign a 19-year-old Messi, maybe.
Well, compare Declan Rice to Enzo Fernandez and Moises Caicedo, who, in terms of the impact they've made for the fee, Declan Rice has been an amazing signing for Arsenal, and he showed that if you push the boat out for the right player, it can be transformative, and that's what Arsenal. That is the position they're in now. They have to find the right player to do it, but if they do, it could be a transformative signing that takes them from being perennial runners-up to champions.